Fintech has seen phenomenal growth in India, but several PE and VC funds have started raising questions on the governance model. Is a reset required for this space?
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. So the fintech ecosystem in India is certainly a dynamic one. Our team looks at issues globally, and in fact, fintech has been a major area of study for us for a number of years. We have a great partnership with the Cambridge Centre for Alternative Finance from the Judge School of Business in the UK. And we actually run, for the past 2 years, actually past 4 years, we run a global fintech survey looking at the health of the fintech sector. And really the catalyst was the COVID period. Mm-hmm. And maybe I start just with a regional view there. So what we've seen is just tremendous growth globally as it relates to fintech. In fact, customer acquisitions have increased on a 50% basis within a number of different segments. When we look at different business models across the fintech ecosystem. And so that has been consistent across the globe as the world has become more digitalized. I would say it's been a major tailwind. We've also seen, and these stats also apply to India and the APAC region, that fintech are being, when you look at their customer base, a large percentage of the customers and clients that they're serving are the underserved population. So those who have historically not had the access to finance as others might. So this too is quite powerful, and there's a large female segment to their customer bases. So there's a very strong empowerment conversation to be had. In the Indian context, we have somewhere around 9,000 fintechs, a tremendous amount of money flowing in from outside of India to invest in this space. It's a vibrant market given the digital public infrastructure that's been put in place, allowing entrepreneurs to really experiment and grow. But along with that come some trade-offs. And certainly with Know Your Customer, AML, due diligence processes, and also fraud. I know there's been an uptake in those that would leverage technology to take advantage of others. And these are some of the things that unfortunately creep into the system. But and the regulators are aware of this, obviously. I know RBI and others are having regular consultations with the fintech universe here in India. And so this is not unknown. The question is, how do you balance self-regulation with a heavier hand? And at this point in time, self-regulation feels like the path that has been chosen.
China has had a head start in the fintech, but after the COVID lockdown, their showdown with the US and their global expansion, Chinese firms have also seen a slowdown. What scope does this leave for India?
Yeah, I think we're seeing, so our team works very closely with 260 financial institutions around the world. And really we touch almost every region in the context of the work that we drive. And when I talk with CEOs and I talk with financial services boards, one of the most prominent issues that I hear globally is this notion of a more fragmented financial system. So there are geopolitical tensions and currents that are certainly present today that weren't as pronounced 5, 7, 10 years ago. And therefore, the system is adapting. Investors are adapting. National policies are adapting. And there will be, therefore, changes in capital flows. India is interestingly positioned in that context and has been a beneficiary of money coming into the economy, in particular into the technology space and the startup space, from abroad. And I think a combination of different policy choices that have been made in India make India quite an attractive investment destination. So in addition to the digital public infrastructure that we may talk about in a little bit, that creates an enabling environment from a technological standpoint, tech stack standpoint. You also have changes in the bankruptcy law and taxation code, adding clarity. And I think in that combination, it's potentially an attractive set of changes and advancements that will give the international investment community confidence to come and invest with significance in the Indian market.
So interest in retail investing has been rising both globally and in India.
Yes.
So with the number of individuals registered to trade on India's national stock exchange nearly tripling since March 2020, are there any potential risks involved in this trend?
Here too, we've seen a global increase in retail investing since COVID. Again, not particularly unique to India, but very pronounced here. And we've done at the World Economic Forum a good amount of research on this topic. In fact, we have an initiative that looks at the future of capital markets. And the orientation of that work is toward this idea of democratizing markets as a result of technology. And so when we look at doing that successfully, there are really three elements. One is access to markets. So you have to be able to get access to the tools and to be able to deploy capital. And generally that's through a smartphone, and the applications that have been created are phenomenal to do that. The second is around being an empowered investor. So this notion of financial literacy, understanding what you're investing in. Mm-hmm. And these pieces all work together to reinforce the third piece, which is trust. Mm-hmm. And so the capital market environment in India over the past few years, it's been one of the best performing markets. People have made money here. But markets don't move necessarily in a purely linear, one-directional way, right? We've seen throughout the world ups and downs, including in India over the years. So if you're investing, how do you go through those periods that are more challenging? And what is that experience? And maybe one of the considerations for policymakers, but also businesses that are active in this space, is how do you educate individuals that it's not just all going up at all points? How do you have an investor mindset? How do you make your way through more difficult and challenging market environments, which inevitably do come? So this idea of being an informed investor, a diversified investor, and having access to educational resources to do that is really fundamental.
Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence is seen as an opportunity as well as a threat. How will it impact the fintech sector?
AI, so I'd mentioned this Cambridge survey that we had run on the future of fintech. And we actually asked the 230 plus fintechs around the world if you could rank the most important development around you in your environment for the next period of time. What would that be? And 70% of those individuals said AI is the most relevant emerging element that I'm trying to get my arms around and tap into. So it is a major force. It is a major force. And businesses will incorporate it. It will be helpful in terms of personalization and customization of products and services. It will be helpful in the context of risk management. But at the same time, if you are a supervisor or you're a regulator, you too need to understand that technology. And it's moving so quickly. And so this notion of balancing risk and reward, right, innovation and maybe a heavier hand around regulation is a very tricky dynamic to manage. And so, and in particular, as these AI models become increasingly complex. So how do you explain the result that one of these models produces? It's not always intuitive. So do you trust that result? So if you're in the shoes of a regulator, that's a very tough dynamic to contend with. So I think we will continue to work our way globally and in India through that dynamic. The sophistication level of the regulatory authorities will also need to increase commensurate with the business sector, and talent, technology, technologically savvy talent will be at a premium. And that's true in the private sector, and that's true in the public sector.
You talked about regulators understanding the changes in artificial. Are enough talented regulators available, or how do you see the regulatory mechanism adapting to this changing world?
So again, back to our survey with the Judge School of Business of Cambridge, we had one of the questions we had asked our entrepreneurs was around the skill set of our regulators. And actually in the APAC region, the regulatory agencies were generally viewed as being quite skillful. And so that's great. I mean, when you look globally, obviously there are varying levels of sophistication of markets. And so this brings an opportunity globally to share best practices and competencies. And one of the things that we're looking at is how do you bring the most sophisticated actors in the financial services space from the private sector together in a knowledge exchange with some of the key supervisory bodies so that it's absolutely in the best interest of the business sector that their corresponding regulator understands as closely as they do their activities and the technologies they're using to conduct those activities. And so it's in the mutual best interest to share that information and to try and level set. And that is a rather large challenge, but it's something that we as a team are looking at currently and trying to devote some time to.